And so, one of the curious things about life is that our constant interpretation of life is carrying us away from reality. That life is very simple, and life is natural, life is love, life is God, is the glory. And yet, our learned habit is a protective habit that overlays the glory of life with all kinds of complications and misunderstandings that we take to be real. And it's almost impossible for us to find our way through the misinterpretations, because if we're using the mind to try to fix the ways that we misinterpret and misunderstand and protect and are moved by conditionings and beliefs, we're only using more of the same machinery, the same limited technology of the mind to try to change that or undo it. And it will only ever lead to a different configuration. It's like moving the furniture around the room. And in a way, sure, we can move the furniture around the room, and we might, for a period of time here and there, feel like, oh yeah, this is really good. This feels really good now. But there'll come a point where, within the confines of limitation, there will be a sense of discontent. There will be being triggered and challenged and all of the ways that we're trying to create an existence that is rooted on getting approval and validation from the external. All of the ways that we're trying to create a life that's rooted in trying to be seen and understood from the external, and trying to present ourselves in a certain way as a way of proving ourselves or trying to fit in. And in a way, the simple solution to it all is love, is God and the glory. And we find God and glory when we rest here now. And when the words God and glory come, the invitation is to replace the word with the name or frequency sense that is resonant for you. Don't be so quickly pushed away by a word that stirs something conceptual in you. The main reason that the world seems to be crazy is because we've lost connection to what is true. It's that simple. We've lost connection to what is true. And we don't find what is true out there and what we're being told is true. We find what is true within our own direct experience. And the profundity of that is that we don't need anything outside of ourselves to confirm the truth of who we are. But we've lost connection to our own intuitive knowing. We've lost the ability to trust that knowing. We've lost the ability to be embodied as love. We've lost the ability to embody God and glory, to embody love, to live as the love that we are. And even our spiritual unfolding, which is, of course, an incredible invitation that we move through in this life, a journey, an unfolding, can also lead us into the absolute and the transcendent, which is the beautiful and pure truth of who we are. But if we can't embody the truth of who we are, if we can't embody the presence of who we are, if we can't bring that love into our lived experience, then firstly, we'll never feel free in the face of life and the play of the world. We'll constantly be triggered and pushed around. And if we're hiding anywhere, there will always be a sense of lack within our sense of ourself. That the only way to fulfillment is to follow the longing and discover that the fulfillment of the longing is within us. There's so many subtle and sneaky ways that we try to find that the fulfillment of that longing in the external. And in a way, it means that there are parts of this unfolding that can feel very alone. And the aloneness is that we have to actually be able to be alone with ourselves. But we don't have to be lonely and cut ourselves off in that. There are so many strategies we've had to try to be safe. And we know the strategy of the transcendent field. We know the strategy of being able to feel the presence out here and go to the presence out here. And we know in a way how to strategize and to make ourselves feel safe. But this whole unfolding is about finding a safety in the knowing of ourself and the embodiment of love and God and glory that is beyond question, because we're so connected to what is out here, what is the infinite eternal, that we can actually embody that presence and we can live it. We can be the vehicle that brings it to the surface of life. And the invitation that we bring to, we say it in many ways, to feel the feelings, to be present with the aliveness or the trigger or the charge in the nervous system, to really come to be able to feel and be present. And of course, we're all working in these ways for this to be the truth of our lived experience. But our deep commitment to protect ourselves, like a deep survival mechanism, means that actually when we are triggered or there's a charge or there's something that feels uncomfortable, we're more likely to go to the presence out here as a strategy to get away from the feelings, which is actually aligned with a kind of disassociation. And that even if we are embodied in many ways, and even if our knowing of this truth is deep, we can still have unconscious strategies at play to dissociate and not really embody the presence that we know out here, but to go to the presence that's out here, that is the infinite and transcendent field, that is the true nature. There's nothing wrong with that. But really what we're pointing to is that there's a deepening. There's a deepening that brings this presence into our lived experience and starts to have the capacity to be able to bring this presence to touch everything in the life, so that we can embody this presence and that we're not creating a division in our life of my spiritual life or my quiet life or my life that's like this and the rest of life, because we're actually here and we're supposed to be very fully engaged in life. And that if we're really willing to look, that we might see that we can create strategies to be keeping us safe. Now, sometimes, of course, it's what's aligned with our laws of nature, but sometimes it can be strategic. When we say, the world out there has nothing for me, what we're speaking of is the The world out there is the creation of the mind and this misunderstanding that we're speaking of. We're not actually speaking about living life, because another strategic misunderstanding that can happen within the realms of spirituality and spiritual unfolding is that we conceptualize the truth that's being shared, and we, in that conceptualization, we create a misinterpretation that's formed out of our conditioning and formed out of our need to keep ourselves safe and not actually be in contact with the fullness of life. We can be very sneaky about how we stop ourselves being in contact with the fullness of life. And we can even be critical of ones that are in contact with the fullness of life, because there can be a misinterpretation of what we're really speaking of. So let's clear that up. That when we say that the world has nothing for me, it's not about disengaging from life. It's about realizing that the world as we see it is the contents of our mind being spilled out on a screen for us to see. And if we try to avoid that, we're actually avoiding our own discordance. We're avoiding our own protections and repressions. And it's actually through engaging in life that we find the reflections and the happenings and the circumstances are actually there to reflect to us what we would rather hide from. So that's why when we, let's say, go to visit our families, things get stirred up. How perfect, right? Where we go, out, or we travel, or we spend time with friends, or we take a trip with friends, things are going to be stirred up because we're moving out of our comfort zone. And if we maybe say we move out of the ways that we're keeping ourselves safe, we're being moved out of, by grace, the ways that we move to keep ourselves safe. And we might then want to find that, oh, that was wrong, that wasn't the right environment for me, or I shouldn't spend really too much time with my family. And of course, we can discern, and we can really open to know what's true to support us, to keep our frequency bright and not be dulled by being kind of pulled in. But at the same time, we reach a certain maturity where we realize that the living of life and the full engagement in life is the means that God and grace is offering us. Because when we truly know that there's only God, there's only love, then we're not triggered by anything. We can't be living in a great pretense with ourselves, like a denial within ourselves, where we have an idea that we've achieved some kind of realization or depth of knowing of God and glory, but that we have to keep ourselves in a certain environment in order to know that. Because if we can be imbalanced anywhere, or we find disharmony anywhere, then that's where our work is. That's where a part of us is waiting to be revealed. I always recall that my first teacher, in a way, when I first came to Canada, I lived in London at the time, central London, and our work and our community was based in central London. And when we first came to Canada, I just couldn't believe the space and the peace and the beauty. And my heart was so called to be here. And I said to him, I want to be there all the time. And he said, sure, of course you do. And I was like, the silence is so deep and it's so profound. And he said, of course, of course. And there's a beauty to that. He said, but when you know that you're truly free is when you can sit in Heathrow Airport, which is the main airport in London, and you feel the same kind of freedom and peace, right? I'm being called to go to London this summer, right? There's no mistake in that. You know, it's profound. But this is the truth for all of us, right? Is that it's very easy to find peace in a peaceful environment. It's very easy to feel peaceful and awake and glorious when we've created a sanctuary for ourselves and we've created a life. And it doesn't matter if we live in, you know, a beautiful island like Cortez, or if we live in a city, we still find a way to keep ourselves safe, right? But ultimately, it's okay to support ourselves and our nervous systems and to live in the beauty of nature and the grace and the glory. It's not saying that isn't like a true and deep support in our lives. But there's this discernment that comes that if we are really to embody this truth, to really embody this love, that we truly have to be able to embody, in a way, the seeming suffering of the world, the seeming darkness of the world, the seeming craziness and chaos that we see through our filter of our mind. Because the way that we stop being controlled by our own mind is by being willing to see what our own mind is creating. If we're afraid of what our mind is creating and we're trying to hide from that, then we're not in the fullness of this knowing of the unified field of God and glory. And ultimately, the only protection, the only safety, the only sanctuary we truly need is to know our connection to Source, to let God and glory into our hearts, and to know that living in God and glory, there's nothing else that we need. We don't need strategies. We don't need anything but God and glory. But if we're so disconnected from God and glory and our intuitive knowing, then we're going to continue to perpetuate the sense of feeling unsafe. And we won't fully embody the glory that this unfolding has to offer us. That the glory that this unfolding has to offer us is about embodying the presence, embodying, in a way, the transcendent. And there's not a strategy of knowing how. It's about opening to God and glory and coming to this knowing of what God and glory is, and then being to sit in the face of anything and everything that arises in the knowing of God and glory, and welcome all that is in the field. Let God and glory, through your lived experience, touch everything. And that's not a doing. It's that when you're resting in God and glory, when you're resting in presence, presence naturally touches everything. It can arise, well, I don't know how to feel. And of course, we can also recognize that we can be so fearful of feeling that we don't know how. And our commitment can be to not feel, because our needs met structure from when we were young was to not feel, because to feel might have felt unsafe within our family. Well, let's say it very often did feel unsafe. It felt unsafe to be angry, unsafe to feel sad, unsafe to show your true feelings. So we learnt to not feel and not show our feelings, and we learnt that to be safe was to not feel. And then we took on an interpretation that if I'm to be safe and loved, then I better not feel anything. I better not show. And I definitely better not feel or do anything that brings up feelings in my mother or father. I better not bring up the anger in my father, because then we're all in trouble. I better not bring up the sadness or anger in my mother, because then we're all in trouble, right? So we learned these strategies, and we don't need to go psychologically into understanding that, because that in itself can be a distraction. But if we recognize that when something is arising for us, that the invitation is to just be really present with it. And if we recognize that there's going to possibly and likely be something in us, a strategy within us that says, get away from this. This is dangerous. This is not safe, right? But that we're able to actually meet and be with what is arising in the field, all of it. And really, in a way, the maturing of this unfolding is the ability to be with ourselves. And when we say the word maturing, that can really stir the part in us that's competitive and wants to be the most mature, right? So let's just notice that part, because that part can be like, right, I need to be able to do that, to be the most mature. And let's just be really gentle around these competitive edges and all of the ways that we can make this spiritual unfolding into a really brutal and austere proving of ourselves, proving that we have the capacity to handle hardships, and we can actually be really unkind to ourselves in this unfolding by trying to push ourselves. But pushing ourselves and proving ourselves and being able to withstand, actually, it's often not actually feeling the true feelings and actually truly being with ourselves in kindness. It's actually a strategy to cut ourselves off and be austere with ourselves while we actually brutalize ourselves through our own self-judgment, and that we imagine that this is being spiritually mature, sitting for hours and hours in meditation, and we tell ourselves all sorts of things that are not truth or reality, that we have to hold ourselves, and even if our body is in pain, or even if there's things arising, that we have to stay. But often we're not actually meeting ourselves. We're not actually coming to an embodied presence that actually has the capacity to dissolve the barriers, right? So as these words are coming, just use what's being spoken in words and what's being stirred and enlivened in your seeing. Use it as an opportunity of illumination, right? You're not learning something. You're not being given an instruction to create greater austerity or to push yourself harder or to be even more mature and refined, right? That's never the purpose of what's being spoken. And I'm realizing how much misinterpretation there might have been, of what is being shared, and not just through here, but just generally, because we're interpreting everything through our learned survival mechanisms. We're interpreting everything through our fear. We're interpreting everything through a need to keep ourselves safe. But if we just recognize how much we can be interpreting everything through this idea of needing to learn, needing to do it better, needing to understand. And very often, where there's a sense of needing to find our goodness through reflection instead of through the goodness of God, try to find our goodness or our worthiness through demonstration in the world and being seen, and accolade or achievement and qualifications and perceived ideas of success. And all of us will be carrying that to some degree. So in a way, as these words come, it's just about recognizing that part of you that you're maybe coming into a more illumined seeing of right now. And the words come not to create a greater austerity. The words come to bring an illumination so that we can see ourselves more clearly, so that we can recognize, wow, yeah, that's true here. And it's not about giving an instruction of how to, because the how to is already wired into the wisdom of the intelligence that we are. And so really, it's just about being here and being present with what you are noticing. It's being present here with a kind of relaxation in what you're noticing. Just noticing the places where you can be really harsh with yourself, push yourself, unkind to yourself. Maybe where there's a recognition of within the spiritual journey of taking on ideas of how you need to be austere and push yourself, and that, let's say, that a vigilance is an austerity where you kind of beat yourself up and you make yourself do things, because all of that is born out of the misunderstanding. Vigilance is about being present with yourself. Vigilance is being present with yourself, being loving with yourself in every moment. It's not a hardcore boot camp training, but just so interesting to see how we can understand, and we can even give ourselves like, yeah, I have vigilance. I sat for 10 hours the other day. And the chances are you sat for 10 hours and you hurt your body and you beat yourself up and you weren't actually fully present with yourself. You might have transcended for some of that time, but very unlikely for very much of that time. But you might have fallen asleep a little bit, got a little bit of rest. You might have, kind of tried to drum into yourself some ideas of how you should be. You might have beaten yourself up a lot for how often your mind came in and how much you're thinking. You probably were thinking unconsciously for most of the time and not really realizing. And the disappearance was probably that you were just absolutely lost in thought patterns. And if you dare to even see that, you're just going to beat yourself up even more. So that 10 hours has probably just hurt you a whole lot more. And yet the me can say, wow, look how vigilant I am. And actually there's no benefit to that. This is not, or nor has it ever been, what we're speaking about. We're speaking about being the being. We're speaking about being love. We're speaking about being kind and patient and compassionate in our true nature and embodying that. And in order to embody that, we have to be able to meet ourselves and be present with ourselves so that we don't check out and dissociate. And that might seem a little shocking to the ones that feel like, well, I'm really quite evolved, and I definitely don't do that, because we all have the capacity. When something comes in that is an unconscious commitment, we have the capacity to dissociate and not really feel. And it's not about psychological understanding of dissociation. It's not about psychological understanding of repression and suppression. None of this is about learning more. And all of this is about realizing what the God and glory of your heart truly is. And realizing that the only thing that's needed in life is the capacity, the courage, and the willingness to say yes to God, to say yes to the connection to Source, and to truly realize and let that into your life in a depthful capacity where you can actually see the demonstration of the glory making a difference. And how curious that we can feel like, well, I've been doing that all along and my commitment has been here since 1984. And it's like, yeah, but look at your life. Let your life and your frequency be a measure of what you're living. Let go of the measure in time, or all of the ways that you're measuring your commitment and your sincerity based on pushing yourself and austerity and seeming external ideas, because the measure of this is the depth of love that you are living in, and the depth of love that is shining and embodied in you, right? Then the measure is of freedom, is how much you don't think about yourself, right? And if we're really honest, it's like, wow, yeah, who am I talking to? What am I thinking about? Right? And it's not about measuring, because once we really come to this, we're just the living moment. And to embody this presence, to embody this love, to truly be a vehicle for God and glory and grace, is to let this in. It's not about achievement. It's not about spiritual achievement. It's not about thinking that God is sitting there, or the Divine Mother is sitting there, like ticking your achievements off and waiting to descend. It's like God and glory will descend fully into you right now if you just open and you say, I'm yours. I'm yours. Right? So what is God? What is the glory? And what if it's nothing that we can find with our minds? We can't find it in books. That we find it in presence. And the way that we come to embody the presence is to realize that as we open to feel and sense the presence of our own existence, our own being, that there's no division, and there's a sense of infinite, expansive openness. And the sense of infinite, expansive openness, yes, it means that we feel to have no edges, that we can have a sense of, well, I don't really know where I am. I don't really know what I am. And yet there's also a sense of the point and the presence being here. We don't lose the sense of mind-body. We realize that I'm not limited to mind-body. But we don't lose the sense of mind-body. We don't lose the sense. We just open to a greater fullness. And the part that we know is mind-body, and the part that we generally don't know is the infinite, unbounded expansiveness. So as we open to that, we feel a relaxation of a tightness, of a contraction, of feeling limited. And we open to the expansive, infinite, boundless sense of being, and that what we are is boundless. And we open to this sense of being the transcendent field. And as we open to this, the spaciousness gives us the capacity to be able to witness and watch as awareness the moving, changing aspects. To realize that the expansiveness is not ever touched or disturbed by the moving, changing aspects. And that we have this true nature which is expansive and free and untouched, undisturbed, and is a kind of perfect peace. And here's the beauty, here's the realization. And then here's the mind, here it comes. Here it comes with all its judgment. Oh, you've lost it. Now you've lost it. You had an experience of it, now you've lost it. How are you going to live this? Oh, you're not living it. Oh, you were in this and now you're not. And what are you doing wrong, right? So, wow, right? Wow, what happened to the peace? Well, nothing happened to the peace. Nothing happened to the peace. But the habit is to identify with the mind and then start churning and start identifying and believing, well, now I've lost the peace because the mind is here. And oh, if only you could be more this or more that, or if only you sat more, if only you did this more, right? Whoa, here it comes. And then, well, why are you not doing more of that? Why are you not more sincere? Because if you were, then the peace would be here all the time. But the truth is the peace is here all the time. Where are you? Right? If you're in the mind and you're strategizing for how you could be better and how you're doing it wrong, and this is where you are in the conversation, you're being dragged into the conversation, then the sense of the lived experience is of lack and of wrong and bad and not sincere. And somehow we form an allegiance. Sometimes it gets spoken of it's like we're addicted to that. But the reason that we're addicted to that is because there's a kind of safety that we've learned in the familiarity. We've learned that, like almost like an unconscious commitment to be mean to ourselves and to be in this conversation, that this is life. This is what it was like in my young life, to not feel my intuitive knowing, not be the brilliance, not be the light, not be in the peace. Because if I go in the peace, then all hell could break loose in the house, right? So if we just start to see how we can have these unconscious commitments to not stay in the peace and the beauty. But the peace and the beauty is always here. The true nature is always here. The connection to source is always here. But if we stay committed to trying to fix and change with an idea that if I'm better, then I'll be more in the peace, or I'll be more in my true nature, or I'll be more in whatever that transcendent field of infinite eternal love and grace is. But really, the opening is to recognize that that's always here, and we habitually go towards our strategies and what's familiar and our stress and our suffering, and that it's not about fixing that. It's about just recognizing gently and kindly that the peace is always here, as a kind of awake awareness that's always seeing and is never judging. And that ultimately it's not about transcending to get away from. It's about recognizing, well, there's a part of me that is the transcendent field, that is the peace. And that peace is here. This light is here to illuminate not all of the ways that I'm bad, but to illuminate all of the ways that I make myself bad and wrong and strategize, right? So just in this moment, let's just be quiet here and just be the peace that's here. Let's join in the peace and the presence of God and glory. Let's join in the knowing of this, and that we all know this. We can all access here now the sense of just being here, the presence, that it's available to everyone. And if it feels like it's not available because the mind is busy, then the invitation is to either maybe come to the breath and let the awareness and presence of the breath be a way of bringing us to slow down and bring our attention to the breath instead of the mind. Sometimes it can be useful to bring our attention to something like the heart, or where we tap the heart. Just a way of bringing us here now, here now. And not in a strategic way of getting away, but we just come to presence. Here now, here now, here now. And we can just recognize that presence is here. That there's a part of us that has the ability to witness and be aware of the mind, the busyness, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, right? And for some of us that will feel very easy, and for some of us that might not feel as immediately accessible. And even when we do find it mostly easy, we can have moments where we feel like we're spinning. And in a way where we feel like we're spinning, it's about just stop, just be here, just be here. Be here with whatever is arising. Be here with yourself. Because to be here with yourself is the start of actually embodying presence. To be able to just be with yourself. Even just to be aware of, wow, the mind is really spinning. Wow, there's a lot of stress. Wow, I'm finding it hard. Whatever happens, it's this openness just to inquire, we could even say, in the moment, and to just ask, well, okay, what's happening now? What's happening now? If there's if there's a sense of being able just to drop into the field of presence, or if there's not, it doesn't matter. What is happening now? And we just find that presence is here, and when we just start looking, what is happening now? And everyone is in a unique experience of this moment. And the richness of everyone's unique experience is welcome. And so we just notice what is happening now. And even if we have had big openings and we have great awareness, we recognize that there's a profundity to this question which is relevant, however deep in we think we are. It's relevant to all of us. What's happening now? Because it brings us to an open inquiry and a presence with ourself that is immediate and natural and is beyond any mental ideas of technique or practice or I can or I can't. It just invites us to just be here and just to notice. Just to notice, right? In a really simple way. And in that noticing, it brings a kind of divine welcoming and validation of everyone's experience. Because we can have an idea of, well, am I getting it? Am I in the presence of God and glory? This isn't it. This isn't it, right? But we come to a point where we realize it's all God and glory. So there isn't a measure of, is your experience like a 3, or is it a 7, or is it a 22, right? There is no measure, because as soon as we are just here in the what's happening now, God is here, love is here, right? And you could say, well, I don't feel that and I don't know that. Okay, let that be part of your moment. And nothing needs to trust or bring in a conceptual idea of what God and glory is or what presence is, because just being here with yourself, it is that presence. And as you be here with yourself, that will reveal itself in its own way to you. So what's happening now invites us into like an embodied openness of being with ourselves. It actually invites us into an openness to meet ourselves. What we're not ready to see or to meet, what we might be in denial of, that we're unconscious of, just by its nature, we don't know it's here. So we can have this idea that if we're present and we're just here, that we might meet things we don't want to see, or scary things. But even if we just notice, oh, there's, in my what's happening now, there's a voice that says, wow, I might meet something scary. And that just becomes something that we actually include because we're noticing that. I'm noticing that that the mind is saying this. I'm noticing that the body is feeling this. I'm just noticing this moment. So in the, in the real openness of this inquiry, that we can really just be so present and take an inventory of just what's happening now. And this is available to us anywhere, anytime. And it's not about sitting on the cushion. It's not about being a meditator. It's not about a practice. It's about just receiving the invitation to be with myself, to just ask in this moment. And we might ask that in a moment of stress, or we might ask it in a moment of joy. Wow, what's happening now? Wow, I've got this expansive feeling of joy and love in my heart where I just feel like I love everyone, right? One thing that's fun is in this inquiry is to notice what's happening now. And what happens in the what's happening now moment of, oh, I want to share this. I want to send a message and tell someone about it, right? Whether it's a great, glorious feeling of love, or it's like, oh, I'm feeling, I'm coming into presence of feeling like something like an anxiety or an agitation. That we can meet our edge of our unconscious dissociation by just noticing, do I want to get away from this somehow? By sharing it, or just noticing, do I want to numb this, right? And how might that happen? How might I want to get away from this? And how can I include any strategic wanting to get away from in my what's happening now moment, where I say, wow, what's happening now is that I want to get the hell out of here, right? What's happening now is that I'm judging myself for this, or I'm noticing that I just want to go and check my emails right now. Interesting, right? That there's no judgment, there's no making wrong. There's just this greater intimacy with ourselves where we just start noticing the ways that we operate, and it starts to contextualize and open up like an intimacy with our strategies where we're not making ourselves wrong. One of the things to notice is, as we're speaking, how often we want to share what we're noticing as a way of kind of getting away from often what's happening, but also in subtle ways of, of looking to connect outwards, because we're used to connecting outwards to get approval or a validation. Look at me, mommy, look at me, daddy, look at me now, right? Look at me now. All of these ways that we learned, and it's not that it's wrong, but it can be very profound to just notice. Just to notice what is at play here. Is the strategy a strategy of actually making allegiance with the unconscious commitment to family tribal consciousness? Look at me, I'm not feeling my feelings. I'm being a good girl, I'm being a good boy. I'm not feeling my feelings. I'm not letting myself get angry. And so you will be happy with me, right? Because seeing that subtle commitment where we feel like I'm doing good by not entering deeper into being with ourselves. And again, there's so many subtleties to this, but as we speak of it, it just opens up the field of our inquiry to be able to just have a little bit more of the intelligence of how we operate in protection and how we operate in our true nature as like a whole intelligence that starts to invite us deeper into our inquiry, because we start to see our protections as the intelligence and a wisdom of seeing ourselves, as opposed to a psychological inquiry or a judgment of ourselves, right? So just opening to let this all in this moment. Yeah. Just what are you noticing? What is happening now? So when we speak of connecting to God and glory, really what we're speaking of is connecting with the presence field. When we speak of the field of grace, transmission, we're speaking of connecting with the presence field. And we enter through our own presence to the field of presence, where we join with the one presence that we all share, and we join with the presence of God. So in a way, to just be present here now, and just to be in this openness of what's happening now, what is here now. And we're not looking for anything in particular, but we're just open, just to notice that we just allow this moment to just be as it is. And as we open to this moment, so there's a way of taking a bit of an inventory of just all the things that are happening, witnessing the mind thoughts, the body feelings, sensations. And that there's a beauty to the inquiry of that, just so that we get more present to being able to feel ourselves in the way of, oh, my heart is beating, my palms are hot, right? My belly is churning. That we're opening to the feeling, sensing field, and we're welcoming it all. And then in a way, our entry point to say, well, what's happening now offers us this possibility in any circumstance, in any moment of just being here. And as we just be here, we're opening to the field of being, the field of presence, and we're opening to the presence of what God really is, of what love really is. And we don't have to feel or sense or know that in this moment, and we don't know it through the mind, but we might, in a way, in the openness of this moment, we might invite, well, let this presence reveal its depth. Let this presence reveal the presence of, that this is the presence of God. Let this presence of this now reveal the light, the glory. I welcome it. I welcome God, glory. I welcome the Christ light. I welcome the light of the divine into this heart, into this life. I welcome you, great glory. I welcome you, love. I welcome you, God, Lord, Mother. Whatever word we have that feels resonant, I welcome you, truth. I welcome you, wholeness. I welcome the divine, the light, whatever it is, I just welcome. And we just rest here. So let us rest here together in this open invitation and joining in the frequency field of open invitation, in the frequency field of yes. Yes to your highest self. Yes to connection to source. Yes to knowing beyond all question what you are one with. And let it present itself here now in this moment in its own perfect way. That you're not asking for anything, that you're opening to receive the glory. You're not even asking God for something. that the invitation of revealment is an invitation not for something or for an experience. It's an invitation that is an open listening, an invitation for revealment. Mm. And as we rest here, whatever happens, whatever comes, let it be part of your what's happening now. That if thoughts come, if feelings come, just witness it all, be with it all, just in the best way you can, right? Be really aware of not making anything wrong. And we're just going to rest here for a few moments in the silence, in the stillness together. Just to be here, just as you are. Eyes open, eyes closed, doesn't matter, just to be here. Just to be here together, the one field. You're not alone here, that we're together here. We're joined here in the field of presence, of love, that you are held here, that you are seen here, that you are known here in this field, by the field. That you're not seen and known by your knowledge or achievements. You're seen and known in your purity, your innocence. You're recognized here. There's love and gratitude for you here, just for your beingness, just for your being a part of this one glorious wholeness. You are loved here, just as you are. And as these words come, you may feel a truth to it, or you may feel a push against it. And all of that is okay, because all of it is just about revealing a deeper knowing of yourself and just to be with yourself here. Mm. And as we join here, you're not opening to energies that you're going to take on or take in. We're opening to the field of one, the one field. There's no other, there's no and. There's the one field, one God, one glory, one presence, one being. We're opening to the unified field, where consciousness is unified in the knowing of itself, and where in the frequency of this field, your consciousness flows and joins in the field of consciousness and remembers itself here, flowing together in the one field and remembering, oh, I belong to this field. I belong to this field of presence. And yes, we can bring the words love, God or glory or heart. And it doesn't matter if the words resonate or not. Your belonging is absolute. Your belonging is certain. You belong to yourself. You belong to love. You belong to wholeness. And this unfolding is this adventure of unraveling the ways that we divide ourselves to bring us into the remembrance of this unified field, this unified consciousness. So that we can live this and be joyful here, and we can love each other in the glorious ways that humans can, right? That we have the embodiment mechanism of intelligence. And as we embody the consciousness and the intelligence, it allows us to love each other and to share and join with each other in this incredible human experience, right? That as we embody presence, we have the capacity to be so embodied that we can truly not feel afraid of each other or protect ourselves from each other. That we can meet each other and love each other and share in the living of this frequency of love and reality. And if we really dig deep down, we maybe don't even have to dig that deep down. We find out that there's a way that this is what we're all longing for. And we open to realize, well, this is probably what all humans are longing for. So what if our offering to the whole of humanity is to live this together and to be the frequency field of this that is an offering to the whole, right? You know, in certain classes and practices that we've been part of, often the teacher or the instructor will say, you know, let our practice be for the benefit, the fruit of our practice be for the benefit of all. And this is what is being pointed to, right? It's let the fruit, the reverberant field, the fruit of our lived experience and our sharing, our joining, be of benefit to the whole of what we belong to. Let the reverberant frequencies and resonances of our lived experience, our opening, our joining in the field of presence, Let it touch every heart. And in order for it to touch every heart, I'm willing to let every heart touch me here in this field. I'm here to be touched by all of life. I'm here to not section myself away and hide. I'm here to let all of life touch me, and that the ways that life wants to touch me, that I've maybe protected myself from, I'm open to see that where life wants to touch me in my lived experience is about me being more embodied as this love, and opening to meet myself more deeply in life, in the places where maybe resistance or stress comes up, and that I don't have to force or push myself anywhere. I can attune with my inner knowing and my intuitive heart to feel, is this right for me now? Right? Am I saying no because I'm protecting? Or am I saying no because it's the truth? Right? That we just open to be able to be with ourselves in a kinder and gentler and more patient and compassionate way. Right? Because in a way, the spread of this compassion through our lived experience, as we embody it, it's like it has to start with us, right? We have to be in love with ourselves. We have to be compassionate with ourselves to let that force field of powerful compassion spread. We have to be a living embodiment of it, right? So it all starts here. It all starts here. And how beautiful it is to recognize that we are powerful in God and glory because we embody the power of God. We're powerful in love because we embody the power of love. And as we embody that power through our allegiance and connection to the presence field, we are in service as instruments, as vehicles of God and glory. We're here as instruments for, in a way, the true possibility of healing, and not through fixing and changing, but through seeing from a true perspective and embodying that true perspective and living it by really being kind and loving with ourselves, and just illuminating and loving all of the ways that we can hide from ourselves and be unkind with ourselves. But this is the starting point. So just being here and just noticing, what are you noticing as the words come? What are you noticing as we join and our frequency field of holding and transmission deepens? Because as we join here and we open, it's like the descent of the light comes into all of our lived experience, into our cells and atoms and fibers of our being, and we start to feel more alive. We start to feel that embodiment of presence, of the divine, of love. So just noticing what you're noticing. And everyone is having a unique experience, which is absolutely valid in this moment. We all have our own unique assignments, and it's to be in this together, kind of alone, and yet alone together, right? So we're in the aloneness of what it means to just me and God until there's only God, right? We're in that direct experience, and yet we're together in that. And that's the profundity, is that it's not about sectioning ourselves off. It's about being fully immersed and engaged in life and having this very deep inner communion with God and glory in our own way. And then the dance of our inner communion and our lived experience, we come to realize, is not my inner life or my spiritual life and my outer life and my worldly life. That actually seeing through any division in our lived experience is where the alchemy of love truly starts to reveal its magic. Is where the division between my inner communion with God and seeing that there is only God, of course, this is the magic. And that our lived experience is about dissolving the places where we make edges and we say, oh, that's God and that's not, right? That's love, that's okay, and that's not, right? That we get to meet our resistance, we get to meet where we posture as no, and we get to be with, well, what's happening now? What is this? In my deepest heart, I know this has to also be God, this has to be love, but I'm not seeing it right now, and that's okay. I'm connected to the part of me that knows the one, knows the presence field, and I'm connected to the part of me that is resistant. And I'm open to it all. And I just rest here. And I don't try to fix or change myself or make myself wrong. And I don't transcend away from this, that I rest in the glory of God, of the knowing of this heart. And I just meet what's here. And I allow the feelings and the turbulence and the discordance to be here. And I in this, I allow the alchemy of light to transmute and reveal the love that is here, that where I can't see it. I allow the miracle of love to reveal itself where I'm not seeing it right now. And I don't have to do anything but just say yes to God and glory and be fully present here, fully show up here, fully feel what I'm feeling here. And so that I can let presence touch my fear, and I can let presence touch my sadness, and I can let presence touch my hate and my fury, and I can let presence touch the parts of me that I think are dark and bad, and I can let presence touch everything that is here and reveal the truth of what is here as one field. Yeah.